Hello and welcome to the Bell Mama Hypnobirthing and Positive Birth podcast. My name is Ellie Waddington. I'm a hypnobirthing teacher, antenatal instructor and positive birth coach, and I'm here to help you go into the birth of your baby with a positive mindset. Every week I share my top tips, advice and amazing birth stories to help you go from fearful and anxious about your birth to positive and confident. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and let's get into this episode. Hey gorgeous mama, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. This week I have a really beautiful birth story for you. This is from one of my students called Sophia, and she joined my online program, the Hypnobirthing Toolkit, back this year in April. I think it was April this year she joined. And I've really enjoyed getting to know her all the way throughout her pregnancy and supporting her on her journey. And her story is just a really great example of how getting prepared and getting knowledgeable and knowing you're right and putting together properly informed, well-researched birth plans makes all the difference to your birth and the way that you end up feeling about your birth. Sophia was initially planning a home birth, but her baby decided of her own volition to come a few weeks early. But because Sophia had done all this research and all this preparation, she still had an absolutely amazing birth experience. She knew exactly how to handle it, what to do, and I'm so proud of her. I know she is very proud of herself. So here it is, Sophia's birth story. I can't wait for you to hear it.
So I'm Sophia. I also go by Valentina or V. I found out I was pregnant around December time. So it was a nice Christmas present for most of my family, or my mum anyway. At the booking in appointment, straight because I've got health issues, straight away the midwife kind of said, "You're high risk. You're going to have to give birth in hospital." There wasn't even a suggestion of you've got options. So I'm like, well, okay. My health conditions are, I've got heart issues. I've had a heart attack and a cardiac arrest, and I've got ADHD. So I've got a few things going on in there. Pregnancy, I'm not a big fan of, and I keep saying I probably won't do it again. I keep changing my mind on that now. I had morning sickness throughout the whole thing, and I'm still waiting for that pregnancy glow, and I'm 6 weeks postpartum now. So pregnancy, as like I said, I didn't enjoy it that much, but it was going okay. I say I was high risk. I did a lot of research with my ADHD. I hyper focus onto things, and so as soon as I got pregnant, I was looking up pregnancy and everything to do with birth and things like that. And hypnobirthing kept coming up. So I read about it, and I was like, this really suits me. I like this. And then I found a couple of podcasts, including this one. And I was like, yeah, I can do, this is me. Mentioned it to my partner, Dan, and he was like, sounds a bit weird, but okay, if you want to do that, we'll do it. Found out quite early on we were having a girl, because I was, not that I don't want a boy, but I was really stressed that I was having a boy. And I dreamed of having a girl. Even though I'd never thought about having children before, I didn't want a boy, but I convinced I had that. So we had a gender scan, and it was a girl. I was wrong. When I was about 20 weeks, I started doing more about home birth. And because I'd been told I couldn't have one, I'm like, oh, well, actually I can. I'd be out of guidelines, but if I want a home birth, I don't like hospitals. I spend a lot of time in them. I want a home birth. I mentioned it to Dan, and he's like, I'm not sure about this. I was like, well, I would really prefer it. I was like, okay, well, we'll see. I think he was convinced. He was going to try and convince me to have a hospital birth. Then at 23 weeks, roughly about 23 weeks, Dan was actually involved in quite a serious car crash while he was at work. He was in hospital for 3 weeks and in a coma for about 3 days. He's okay now, mostly. But when he got discharged, he was like, V, if you want the home birth, I've had enough of hospitals. Let's have a home birth. I'm like, great, I'm having one anyway, but thanks. And then we get to about 33 weeks, and I went into hospital a couple of times. I had to go in every couple of weeks for my heart, check my heart was okay and check my blood pressure was okay. Strangely enough, my blood pressure has never been lower than when I was pregnant, oddly enough. So yeah, everything was okay. I kept going in for checkups and it was all okay. About 33 weeks, I had cramp. I had Braxton Hicks for about 25 weeks, and I had cramps. So I went in and got checked out. Fine. A couple of weeks later, went back in with cramps. I was fine. Got sent home, and then I'll always remember the day of the England World Cup semi-final. I had the worst back pain I've had in a while, and I was also getting a bit of what I thought was Braxton Hicks, and it was really uncomfortable. And I actually just thought it was a stress of the football because I do like my football. During the match, it got worse, but I kind of still played it off. What I didn't know, well, I know now, Dan was actually timing them because he thought something was up. The next day we went shopping and I couldn't move. I was struggling. I keep leaning on the trolley. It was just it was so intense. Later that night, it was about 7 o'clock. No, 6 o'clock. I said to Dan, "You're gonna have to ring the hospital. I think I feel awful. I think I'm in labour, but I'm too early." And he was like, "I think you're in labour as well. So let's ring the hospital." So he rang the hospital and got everything together, all my lights, my lavender spray, my hospital bag, because we packed one just in case. The only thing he couldn't find is my comb, which I have just found the other day. So we didn't have the comb in that, but I don't think I needed it looking back now. I've got a sleep band, so it's a hairband with earphones in. So I put that on, put my MP3 tracks on, and I couldn't control my breathing because I was panicking because I was 35 plus 4. So I thought, I was stressed. So I put the eye mask on, found the right MP3 track to help me with my breathing. And we went to the hospital. The car journey was horrendous. We got out the car and I was sick. I'm sick quite a lot, it turns out. We get into the hospital and I'm sick again at the triage desk. And they were like, right, let's take you in, let's get you checked. So they done an exam and I was 6 centimeters dilated. So I was definitely in labor. And so they put me into my own room and I'd done about 5 birth preferences. And Dan found out the right one because he knew what I wanted. And he found out the right one, knew everything was, gave it to the midwife, Lisa, and she was amazing. She looked at my birth preferences, right, I've done hypnobirthing. I'll set up the room as I would follow it as best as you can. I'd hired a doula because of all my health issues. So by that now she'd arrived. So the 3 of them, Lisa, Dawn, and Dan, set about decorating the room for me. Put some night lights up, some fairy lights. Dan sprayed everything with lavender spray. So it was just perfect. I had my eye mask. It was on and off all night, all evening. And the only place I could get comfy was laying on the bed on my side. And I'd always said I'm not laying on the bed, but you do what you need to do to get comfy. After laying on my side for a little bit, I got up and started pacing the room. I couldn't sit still. And then I ended up crouching a little bit, or squatting rather, and that led to a highly embarrassing let's call it a bowel movement. And it just went everywhere. And I'd been sick again as well. But nurses come in, cleaned that up. No one, no, I'm quite squeamish, but it didn't bother anyone, didn't bother me. We'd also brought a fan in, and Dan had set that up, and I was complaining how hot I was. It wasn't a particularly warm day, but on evening, but I was so hot, and the fan wasn't doing anything. So I was wearing this big oversized baggy t-shirt that come flying off. I was just stood in the room completely naked. I did not care. I was like, if anyone complains, they can complain. I don't care. The consultant come in a few times to check my heart was okay. And Dawn had asked them to do it every 2 hours. If everything was showing fine, could they do it every 2 hours? Which he agreed to, because blood pressure was high but reasonable, and heart was coping okay, is what they'd expect. Oh yeah, about 9 o'clock, Lisa, the midwife, come back in with a student midwife, a Zimbabwean midwife called Shelley. And she asked if she could do another vaginal exam. And I hadn't said that on my birth preferences that I didn't want any. I just didn't mind what the situation was with it. So I said, yeah, you can do one. Well, I don't know what she did, but as soon as she put her fingers in there, I was screaming in pain. So she stopped straight away, and she was very apologetic. And I think it was just, I was in the middle of a contraction. And so I was stood up, and Lisa says, right, let's look at your back. And they looked for the purple line. And she never said how far I was, but all she said was, oh, I don't think you've got long. About an hour later, my waters broke, finally. I don't know if that was caused by the exam, but it was an hour later, so I'm not entirely sure. It could have been, it was a mistake, it doesn't matter. And throughout the whole labour, Dan and Dawn were giving me water and jelly beans. I'm not a big jelly bean fan until I was in labour. And just before midnight, I went into transition, and I was like, Dan, I can't do this. I just can't do this. I want to go home. Please, can we go home? I didn't realise that I was in transition at the time. And he was like, look, you can do this. You are doing it. Our baby girl's here soon. I'm here. And that's kind of all I needed to hear. And yeah, after that, I just started pushing, and I said no coach pushing. And actually, I was so in the zone, I don't remember hearing anyone tell me I needed to push. And then that way I was pushing for about an hour and a half, and I was making some weird noises. Dan said he's never heard me make these weird, really animalistic kind of noises. And then about 1:30, I let out an almighty roar. Her head come out. Now, Dan had said quite early on in the pregnancy he wanted to catch the baby. So he was standing behind me, on his crouching down, ready to catch. So he had her head, and then I pushed again, roared again, should I say, and he caught her. And then he passed it to the midwife, and he come round in front of me, and then he lifted her up to me, and I had her on my chest, and Dan just stood there hugging me. So we were like sandwiched in one, and we just in our little happy bubble. And Evangeline cried, I cried, Dan cried. And then, because I'm still naked at this point, the student nurse, Shelley, she actually picked up this shawl I'd crocheted and pulled it round me. It's a bit of modesty, I suppose. After about 45 minutes, we had skin to skin for about 45 minutes, and I birthed placenta, and we waited till White to cut the cord, and Dan cut the cord. We also kept the placenta. We'd said that we wanted to, and we've actually planted that in the garden, and it's a beautiful pink rose bush on top of it at the moment. There's a lovely rose on there now, actually. So Dan went home for a couple of hours. I think he went to get some baby clothes because she was 35 plus 6. Yeah, 35 plus 6 when she was born. None of her clothes fit her. So he went into 24-hour Tesco's and picked up some new tiny baby clothes. And he come back a little while later with some McDonald's breakfast for me. And I tell you, I'm not a big fan of breakfast and McDonald's, but it was the best one I've ever had. The midwife Lisa come in around shift change, so about 7 o'clock, and she said goodbye and everything. She said how well done and all that, and had a cuddle with us all. And then we sent a text to my family. We just put, "Hi, my name's Evangeline. I arrived a little bit early. Mummy and me are doing really well. But Mummy and Daddy are pleased for you to meet me, but please wait until we get home." Because we kind of wanted it just to be us for a bit. And I was actually discharged that afternoon, luckily, because I didn't want to stay in hospital too long. I didn't mention the gestational diabetes. I also had gestational diabetes in the pregnancy. And everyone's going to tell me I was having a big baby, and she was 4 pounds 8 ounces. So not a big baby, but I controlled it really well. I was really strict on my diet. Didn't have one spike on the monitor. So it was really well controlled. Not so much now.